Welcome back to the Gen Z Speaks podcast. Today, we're just going to jump right into our main topic of discussion, which will be mass shootings. Really quickly, with me today, my fellow co-hosts, Matt Gutierrez and Jenish Thanki. How you guys doing?
Holding up, man.
Yeah, sad days, but moving forward.
Yeah. So our focus today basically is to talk about what happened in Texas in regards to the school shooting. And our goal really in this podcast is to understand what's actually happening and not just rush to judgments. And number two, we want to talk about different aspects of mass shootings and why it happens in the US and like specific tangent solutions that can improve the status quo. And so our job really is to actually help each other understand the problem and like kind of the root causes of things. And we'll try our best to be as accurate as possible. We've done a lot of research for this specific podcast, and so we hope you find it informative and insightful in any sort of way. So let's dive right in, guys. I think
let's jump in. So let's just start off with what happened in Uvalde, Texas, and it's really sad what happened, right? But I mean, I'm sure everybody knows what's going on, but I'll just give a quick overview of what happened, right? So we have an 18-year-old Hispanic kid. Apparently, he was being bullied as a kid and in school, and just a lot of pent-up anger and rage kind of devoured him. And he goes on to freak out. We don't really know yet what happened right behind closed doors and like what happened in himself. No info has been released on that yet. But what we do know is that day he released 3 messages, still disclosed to who he was sent it to, right? But he basically said he's going to shoot up a school and he's going to shoot his grandma, which is exactly what he did. He shot his grandmother, injured her severely, and took off to school. Things are still kind of wishy-washy with police reports. Originally, police said that they fired contact with him when they originally saw him, but then police reports later said that didn't happen. The police rammed into a glass, I believe into a classroom glass, and started firing on him from there. And they saved a couple kids, but nothing really happened. And 90 minutes later, or 80 minutes later, 21 people died. So it's really unfortunate that this keeps happening. And it's insane to me how like the dichotomy between like the Republicans and Democrats, it just continues to like diverge further. Sorry.
Right.
And it shouldn't really be like a political thing, right? It should be like we're all humans, we're all Americans, and there shouldn't be such like aggression towards each other, especially when it comes to this.
I think there's definitely a heavy political implications here, and even though we're not trying to make the topic inherently political, that's kind of the nature of it. But before we talk about the politics, I want to talk about the shooting itself. We got the reports that he walked into the school. He was, like you said, it's kind of, we don't have a clear report, but some guard countered him, and I guess they had an altercation, and he got into school and then started shooting kids and teachers. When this was happening, there was police officers outside, and they also were getting calls from inside the schools from students who were whispering and telling them, you come in, we need help. And a lot of reports say, and parents that drove to the school and were trying to run in through the barricades, they were getting like handcuffed. They were saying that the police didn't go in. So the first issue with the shooting was maybe the police should have had a better response. They should have been more prepared for this. It feels like in a lot of cases, it kind of goes back to the whole, when the whole thing happened with police and Black Lives Matter, where police, it seems like police need more training. They're not ready for situations like this. And I understand situations like this don't happen often. This is not something, and thank God it doesn't, but this is not something that is common. But as a police officer, I believe it's your responsibility to be ready for situations like this and have a quick response to it. I mean, I read reports where they were waiting for an hour plus outside without any action. They were thinking, do we go in, do we not? And then they had to wait for border like the higher securities border officers to come in. So what do you got? First of all, what are your guys' thoughts on just the police officers, their response to the whole thing that happened?
I think I would kind of push back against the idea that this doesn't happen quite often. Not in regards to police. I think this happens so much. Mass shootings happen so much that we've kind of just not normalized, but we're kind of desensitive. I don't know if that's the right word, but what I'm trying to say is that it's just become the norm. And so when a shooting happens, it's like just another day in America, right? Like 19, like think about what just happened. Like 19 kids just died, and like they have like parents had to bury their children. It was just like insane. I can't even imagine what that's like. And we're just so used to it happening in the United States that it just seems like just another day. So I do think it happens. Like I think almost every day on average, there's a mass shooting in the US, meaning like, more than one person is killed and it's not part of an organized crime or terror group. Like it's an individual basically killing a bunch
I
of
would
other
classify
people.
that as shootings, not mass shootings. I feel like this is more of a
Mass shooting is mass shooting is more than 3 or 4 people, correct? Isn't
yeah,
that technically?
yeah.
Yeah. So on average, it happens once a day, apparently,
Wow.
like, according to the statistics. So exactly. And so the police response, again, it's what they did was completely wrong. It was not brave at all. It was unbecoming of what police officers should do. So I think it's simple as that. But I think, of course, police need more training, but I think it's a bigger issue than that. But you are right. Like, police, obviously, they should be prepared for this. Like, just because this doesn't happen often in terms of like the mass size of this, like 20 students being killed.
Mhm.
I mean, it does happen often, but I understand what your point is. Like, there's no accurate way to train for it. I still think that when you're signing up to be a police officer, it's your responsibility to put your life on the line. And before you commit to being a police officer, you should know what you're getting yourself into. If you don't want to put your life on the line, it's fine. I'm not judging you, but just don't become a police officer or go, try to protect people's lives, because that's part of the job. Like you might have to sacrifice your life for others. That's part of your job. And they clearly didn't do that because they waited for an hour, right? I mean, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. Why are they waiting for an hour?
80 minutes.
80 minutes. It's ridiculous.
That's an hour and
I don't
20. It's
understand what
ridiculous.
happened.
Yeah, and
And
I
what was
think-
just real quick, what was heartbreaking to me was the fact that these parents who didn't have guns, didn't have anything, they were rushing in to save their kids, and they were getting handcuffed by I think that's good. I think they would have been injured if they didn't get handcuffed. The shooter might have shot them as well. But the fact that they even had to go in and they were yelling at the police officers still, hey, you guys should go in or I'm gonna go in. The fact that they even have to do that is kind of like crazy to me, and it just seems ridiculous.
100%, Jenish. Like it's insane to me. Even like we look at just police protocols, not even just like mass shootings, right? Or shootings in general. We look at like police protocols like across the board, and it seems like over the years, things have become more and more like timid. They kind of step back more. They kind of wait for, the end of it to happen. And then they go ahead and pounce, right? Like we see this with like robberies. We see this with, high-speed chases. They just follow them and they just wait until the damage has been done. And it just seems like protocols are further against their courage and like further against like their bravery, I'd say. And it's been more like, let's protect our officers, which fair enough. Let's protect our officers. Right. But they also took a stand to be like our servants. I mean, I hate to call them that, our public servants, but that's reality of it. Right. They took a stand. There's tax dollars on the line to pay police officers to keep us safe, to do the dirty work. And so it just seems like protocols more and more have been just like protecting them more than protecting the public.
Mm-hmm. Also, just going back to the term mass shooting, I just confirmed. So officially, according to our law enforcement agencies, particularly the FBI, a mass shooting is just an incident where four or more people are killed in a particular location. So that's what defines a mass shooting. And so on average, I think it happens about once a day in the US. I believe that's like the accurate number, which is insane to me. Like once a day.
It doesn't even seem real. It just feels like it just doesn't
unreal.
seem a real statistic.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think in terms of what I do want to say about the police thing is a lot of people are using this as a way to assail like police officers who are actually like doing their jobs and do good work. They're using this as an example of like, oh, defund the police. Like they're going back to that, like, look, police is evil and they're not doing their jobs. Of course, there's good police officers. There's incompetent police officers like we saw in Uvalde, Texas. They didn't do their jobs. But we shouldn't, I mean, I do think they need more training, actually, way more training. I think there's a lot of things that can be changed about the police system, but to classify the entire entity of police, which is to safeguard people, I think it doesn't make any sense why people are just saying, oh, look, police officers, this is what they do. You know, it's like if a terrorist kills someone who belongs, like, you know, I'll speak for as a Muslim, if when a Muslim terrorist claims to be Muslim, you know, kills a bunch of people, you can't just say the religion is wrong, right? It's the same thing with a police officer when they act incompetently. You can't just say that, oh, this one police officer did something wrong, the entire, or like a whole police unit did something wrong, it's completely everyone's corrupt. I don't think that's true. But police do need more training, 100%.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't want to, I'm not bringing up that point, you know, to devalue the police officers. I'm saying I'm kind of establishing more background information regarding this shooting, and there is issues in you know, how police are trained, and that's for another day. But yeah, let's talk about.
No, absolutely.
I also want to talk about just the shooter himself. You know, I want to definitely get into the bigger aspects of, you know, political situation and how, you know, gun laws should be regulated. But first of all, the shooter, he was an 18-year-old. A student. He just turned 18, and right when he became 18, he went to buy an AR, or 2 ARs, and about 380 rounds of AR ammo. And first of all, it's pretty crazy that when you're 18, you're able to buy an AR, a gun that's literally marketed to kill people, and it's kind of like a symbol of, I guess you could say, protection, but also a symbol of like military and, you know, fighting. But, you know, you can't buy alcohol at 18, or like, you know, this other stuff you can't do at 18, where it's like it's kind of ridiculous how the gun laws are or it's very hypocritical how the gun laws are implemented versus other laws, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I do have some pushback against the whole AR argument, because it's not the gun in itself, right? It's not the gun in itself. It's the gun that's been marketed. That exactly what you said. It's a symbol now. And so, but just because it's a symbol, and just because it's like you're marketing that this gun is bad or has violence associated with the name, doesn't mean that, right? Because you can go ahead and you can buy a different gun. You can go ahead and buy a different assault rifle, because assault rifles aren't just AR-15s, right? There's tons of different types of assault rifles. And there's tons of different types of, you know, guns that you could buy behind the scenes. And so I first off have pushback against using that term. So I'm just going to say guns in general. But let's just talk about like how, you know, it's not even that. Let's talk about that YouTube video, you know, we all discussed, right? So there was this TED Talk being discussed about, you know, the actual issues of gun mitigation and gun, you know, licensing, right? So that's like the largest issue. Like, how do we do gun control? And it's not the actual gun control that's the dilemma. The dilemma is the lack of licensing behind it. And, you know, there's some states with some licensing laws, and they have proclaimed that there's been less shootings since, I think it was a drop of 24% in their states in terms of gun violence, which, you know, is good because, you know, first off, they have safety trainings. You have to go through step-by-step process online and then go physically get the gun. And, you know, there's steps towards it. Right. And so I think first off, that's like pretty essential. You shouldn't be able to just go and buy a gun and that's that, because there are,
it just, you know, it shouldn't be an impulsive buy. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, for sure. It shouldn't be impulsive. But yeah, like even more than that, right? You get into it and you get into like why it's happening and what the guy, do you remember the guy's name? Give him some credit. No.
Well, who cares? Like, this is
I don't know. I mean, it was a really good point, man. So he was on a TED
oh, you
Talk,
mean the
right?
TED Talk? I thought you meant.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
TED
thought you meant for the shooter. I was like,
no, the TED Talk.
No,
his name was David
David Farrell, I think it was.
Yeah, David Farrell.
Yeah.
Or,
okay. Well, so yeah.
He's an
Yeah,
advocate of responsible gun usage, right? Like he wants, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this David guy, he like brings up great points about like guns, right? So like in the US prior, like let's just say 40 years ago, because he gives that example. I don't really want to say like towards the beginning, because I mean the Second Amendment was to protect towards like the government and everything. But like he was talking about how, you know, what we used to do with guns was hunt, and we used to be like a gathering type thing, right? A social event where you go and you go hunt, or you know, you go shoot some bullets with your dad, and you know, you shoot some cans. Like that was like the fun stuff to do. And then like mass marketing and globalization came into play, and now you have the NRA, which was originally an advocate for hunting, an advocate for just social like interactions and having fun with your rifles. And now you have like them marketing when sales drop, right? You have them marketing towards fear. Like, hey, this is happening, buy a gun and you can protect yourself. And inherently, what does protecting yourself with a gun mean? It means that it's exactly what David said. It means you're able to shoot somebody and you're able to kill somebody. And if you're okay with that in yourself and you're going ahead and buying a gun in order to kill somebody, that's all, you're already crossing a barrier, right? You're already crossing a line of, you know, I'm willing to harm another human being. Not only am I willing to harm another human being, but with a gun, right? And it just, since like the 70s, this has all progressed like exponentially. So now, like, not only are we fearing people with guns, but we're using guns as an act of like resolution, right, towards it, so we can protect ourselves. And it's just escalated and escalated, and fear turns into anger, and anger turns into, you know, actual action and execution of, you know, horrible acts. What'd you guys think about his video? Did you think it was like some solid points? Obviously, solid points, right? But what really stuck out?
I think he was, so you're referring to David Farrell. I hope I got his name right. He's basically, I think his main points were, number one, guns used to be have a completely different resonance with the American people like 30, 40 years ago. It was mostly about for sports and like hunting, as compared to what guns have become now, where a lot of people get it out of fear. Like after every single mass shooting, the sales of firearms increase because people are concerned that you know, the right to own a gun is going to be taken away, and so they always spike up. And so he's saying people are buying guns because they want to, because of fear. You know, they're letting fear control their lives, and they want to take they want to bring a gun to a fight, essentially, like for their own personal safety. I think, yeah, he brought a lot of good points, I think, which I think we can later discuss as well. But I think going back to the question with Jenish, I think he, about like how he was 18, this Uvalde guy, he was 18 years old and he was able to buy a gun. It makes no sense to me, because psychologically, your prefrontal cortex, right, in our brain, which is responsible for decision making, doesn't fully develop by the age of 25. And so why are 18-year-olds in Texas able to buy guns? Like why, like how, that makes zero sense to me. How the age for alcohol is 21 to buy a gun that can literally kill a person. I mean, alcohol can kill people too, but a gun can literally, you can kill multiple
Yeah.
mass shooting. This is what this guy did. Like, why are 18-year-olds allowed to buy guns? It doesn't make any sense to me. And by the way, the NRA, a lot of states are trying to pass laws to increase the minimum gun age. And I believe it's Florida where the age was recently turned to 21 or something like that. And the NRA appealed that, saying that that was against the Constitution because it obliterated the right for 18 to 20-year-olds to own a gun. I don't think it makes any sense why an 18-year-old or 20-year-old should have a right to own a gun, because their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. They can't properly why?
I disagree, because before the 90s, like this wasn't an issue. And people had guns all the time, and people would go shooting all the time. Like that's not the root though. Like that's just a band-aid, right? Because people can have a gun. Like sure, if you're gonna buy a gun, likeliness is that your family has had guns and there's guns around your house. Like that's not gonna stop you from obtaining a weapon. That's just stopping you from obtaining a weapon under your name. That's the only thing. So it's like the dilemma isn't that. It's not to hold off to your 25 and, you know, sure, your prefrontal cortex isn't like developed yet, but that doesn't mean you're going to go massively shoot people and kill people.
I think the overarching issue, and David mentioned this as well, was that it's about fear, right? Where people are scared. That's why they're buying guns. Even if you're 18, 21, it doesn't matter. Like people are afraid. And the gun sales are going to go up unless the sentiment of, you know, American public, like unless we can establish like our country is safe and we're not gonna just get broken into our house, or get shot, or like stuff like that. But the thing is, while we're working on that, we're working on trying to reduce fear in society. What is the action we take right now, right? Like, what do we do right now? Because people are buying guns and performing acts like this, and that's where it's like, that's where the intricacies come in, where it's like we don't know what to do. Like, yeah, like their supporters, like, we can't sell guns to people who are younger than 21. And then obviously, Matt, you say like that's not the issue, but it's like, that thing is, what do we do right now to minimize what's already happening right now? Because yeah, I agree with you, Matt, that yeah, this wasn't happening before, but I think now also it's just like this whole fear in America, and how much guns are like kind of, I guess, being marketed towards that fear has increased a lot. So that can, that should be taken into account when you're thinking about gun laws, I think. Also, just a quick point, even if you're 18 and you're able to buy a gun, I feel like there should be heavy like legislation. So like, when you're getting like certain licenses, they prioritize people who are older, or like have give a priority to people who are older, more experienced, have like certain experience. Where in Texas, there's no like, there's a licensing, but it's not like you just go in and you just buy a gun pretty much. They just do some background checks and that's it. Versus, there's like trained people and people that know how to use guns, or people who've experienced it with before, where like you shouldn't just be 18, go in, get a gun. That just, I don't think that should happen.
Yeah, well, my point is, like, the Uvalde shooter legally bought rifles after his 18th birthday. He legally bought rifles. So if there was a law in place that didn't allow 18-year-olds to buy a gun, I'm not saying this wouldn't have happened, but he wouldn't have been able to legally buy a gun. He lawfully bought 2 rifles at his 18th birthday. That makes, you guys are right. The root cause of this is that the NRA is telling people that what, just speaking politically, the NRA is like saying to people that Democrats are trying to take people's guns away and people buy a bunch of guns, but those aren't the people shooting people up. It's the people who just are trying to, they have the access to buy guns. The access is my problem for 18-year-olds. The Buffalo supermarket shooter, before Uvalde, there was a shooting in Buffalo, New York, and guess how old he was? 18 years
18.
old.
Yep.
He was 18 and he killed 10 people. This guy, it's usually the Parkland high school shooter. I believe he was 20 or something, right? He was either a teenager, 17 to 20. He was a really, really young guy. My point is, first of all, 99% of shooters are male, and they're all really young, tend to be really young, right? I mean, the Uvalde guy was young. I'm not saying, I
100%,
haven't
yeah.
looked into the age, but they are young people. So my point is, this can be part of one of the solutions, that you shouldn't be able to buy a gun until you're 25 years old, because your prefrontal cortex is just not developed. So you actually lack the proper
Decision making
abilities, because it's just science, it's psychology. It just makes sense. We should make laws that make sense. If you can't buy alcohol when you're 20, before 21, why can you buy a gun? You're completely right, though. The root cause of this is not this or that. Like you said, 40 years ago, mass shootings weren't happening because the NRA was completely different than what it is now. It's become this organization.
Also, so that's another argument that, like, I don't disagree with the whole alcohol versus like gun age thing, but the interesting thing is that alcohol actually like chemically changes something that's going on in your brain, right? Guns don't, right? So that's also to take into consideration, right? Like, I don't know if that's the strongest argument.
Well, for alcohol, it's you can't purchase any alcohol. Like,
Right.
you have to get drunk to chemically be. I mean, you can like
Nor drink. I mean, you're not technically
you're not allowed to
to
drink. You're not allowed to
drink.
drink at all.
Yeah.
You're not drinking at all. So
Yeah.
like, my point is, I mean, what you're saying is yeah, it makes sense. But with guns, like, the right to pick up a gun and be able, that's my whole point too. You can't think logically. That's like the same thing goes with guns. Just like how your mind can, you're too young to consume alcohol. You're too young to have that responsibility of being a responsible drinker. That's the same thing. You can be a responsible gun owner if you're 18. I'm sure most 18-year-olds are, but it's just scientifically, you can't be. There's
And
always a loophole.
It's
So I'm
so
talking
much
about
power, right?
yeah,
It's so much
yeah.
power for someone that young. It's like you have the power to kill, like take a life. That is, I mean, we don't think about it a lot, but that is a lot of power for
But
someone who's 18.
that's not like the intended use. I get it's being used that way, right? But that's
Mhm.
not like why guns are for sale, not to take lives. They're like, it's not for that.
Okay, then I think what we should have then is a more robust licensing system. Background checks
Fair.
barely prevent mass shootings. They don't do anything because the
Yeah, you're
current
right.
background systems that we have currently, it's like it takes 120 seconds. And the
Yep.
FBI's background system check that's in place, it's like very outdated. Millions of records are missing. Like
Mhm.
millions of records are missing from the FBI directory,
Yep.
which like most background, like that's how the background checks are conducted, and it takes literally 2 minutes for you to get approved or not. What
Yep.
kind of a back?
Yeah,
It should be
that's not right.
longer. It should be like other countries have the system where you have to get referrals from people. If you truly acquire a gun, which you have the right to have under the Constitution, the Second Amendment, then I mean, let me push back against my point. Yes, maybe like a 20-year-old actually needs a gun for some sort of reason, right? If they can prove to the government that they are, they don't have a criminal background, they can get references, people can vouch for them, then they should. I mean, I still think the minimum age should at least be 21. It just doesn't make any sense. But, regardless, I just think we should have a proper licensing system where it's a 4 to 5 weeks process to get a gun as opposed to just going into a store and buying it.
And
That to me makes the most sense.
just this point with the licensing, David also mentioned in that TED talk, and we'll link it down below for any of you guys who want to watch it. David mentioned that the NRA 40 years ago used to be an organization that advocates for safe gun laws and safe, like safe use of guns.
They
And
practice, yeah.
now what they've become is this, the left is trying to take our freedoms away, and that's pretty much their whole they're trying to take our freedom away.
Their
They're trying to take our
capstone,
freedom away.
exactly.
That's what they repeatedly say, and they're appealing all these gun licensing laws that are being passed to the Supreme Court. They're appealing those, and I feel like David also mentioned in his closing remarks, he said the NRA should also go back to its roots and establish themselves as a safe gun organization. Not that everybody can enjoy guns, but just with safety and proper checks and balances, I guess. So that is a major point where in the political spectrum, the NRA is kind of inciting even more, I guess, what's the word for it? Like separation between people, where it's like they are trying to take away our guns. It's not like about uniting. It's about they are trying to take away our freedom, right?
I do want to touch on this, but I had another point about the young age thing. So it crossed my mind right now. But yeah, so let's talk about, and it'll come back. But the NRA thing, right? It's just like fear sells, right? And it's all about money. And so what they do is they try to scare you, and they try to like make you seem like it's us versus them. And then when it's us versus them, there's obviously things to sell. And they go ahead and they lobby politicians to keep on with the same laws. And there's some politicians out there. I read a report, $13 million. They made $13 million off of just this one NRA, not one, but the NRA initiative, like throughout his lifespan. That's insane to me that one dude received $13 million to go ahead and do exactly what the NRA is saying to do. Right.
I think that was Mitt Romney.
Yeah, of Utah, Mitt Romney. Yeah. That's brutal, right? So there should be laws against that. It should be exactly what the people want, not what these big corps and what these lobbyists really want for us. I think that's a major issue. It did just come back to me about the whole young thing real quick. So young people have, especially nowadays, right? Like in our current generation, like I do want to talk about the mental illness aspect of it. Like depression, anxiety is like much higher than it's ever been before. And in my opinion, you guys can disagree and let me know why, but I feel like social media and like how we're so connected yet disconnected, I think that affects it so much. Like we're able to see exactly like how the Parkland killer, like how he went ahead and went about his business. We were able to see how the guy in Buffalo, he recorded everything, right? Like he recorded his shootings. We're able to see how he went about it, right? And now all these young people, maybe they're depressed, maybe they're anxious, whatever it may be. Like it doesn't affect me at all how they are, right? But these are the people going ahead and watching what these past killers did and doing the exact same thing. And I feel like social media has been a huge detriment, like especially to like mental health. Alongside like now we have access to bad things and what these bad people are doing. And so what do you think the correlation is?
I think if you're gonna say like the younger people are more prone to anxiety and stress and stuff, I feel like that kind of advocates for what Ibrahim's point was, where young people shouldn't be able to buy guns. If more young people are experiencing anxiety, and this is proven actually, there's statistics that show that more young people are experiencing stress, anxiety, depression. These people that are experiencing this should not be, if they're, and especially if they're young, like they should not be able to buy guns. But
again, that's a band-aid. Like I'm talking about the root, right? Because the root is what solves issues, not band-aids.
The root we established was fear, right? The fear and like how we see guns, right? And the root, we can talk about the root and what the root is, but it's just
can we talk about this fear concept, because I don't think we're explaining it the right way. Like, what do you guys just?
Okay, so how? Okay,
I watched a TED talk, but explain.
This is how I understand it. Okay, so there's a mass shooting that happens, or shootings anywhere across America. And what happens if you're a regular person and the shooting happens in your neighborhood? Oh, I gotta buy a gun because someone might come after me, or someone might come to my house. So what
someone's come, like the other side's coming after my gun laws, right? Like
exactly, yeah. That's also the NRA, yeah. So then what do? Oh, you go buy a gun because you're that's fear. The shooting that just happened incited fear, right? And now you're scared that someone might incite some violence on you, so you need to have a gun for protection. And the whole like Matt mentioned, the whole fear of, oh, they're taking away our freedoms. It's the Second Amendment. They're taking away our rights. That's the fear I'm talking about. Is that make sense, Ibrahim? I don't know.
Yeah, no. So you guys basically are saying that as a society, we are buying guns out of fear, and we're buying guns to protect ourselves from others, right?
Yeah,
like that's the main intention of buying a gun these days, to protect your, I mean,
yeah, that's
wasn't
the root
that the
cause.
but doesn't the Constitution kind of support that? It's to protect the right to arm yourself, is to just
the government.
I mean, I guess they were alluding towards that factor, but at that time, what I don't understand is, bro, if you have an AR-15 or you have a very assault rifle, or like, how are you going to protect yourself against a government which has nukes, like nuclear weapons? Like, if the government really wanted to come after you, I'm sorry to say, you can't do anything.
We're done.
You're screwed. So
Yeah.
the argument that's what I'm like really having trouble understanding, is that, constitutionally, I understand why there was a right, because the British, like the British soldiers used to like quarter themselves in people's houses. They used to randomly show up and like stay there, and then they used to, I mean, like it makes sense why, because there was guns
for sure,
weren't
like
advanced.
back then doesn't relate to now.
Yeah,
I get
so it doesn't
you.
make sense. I get you. Like, what are you gonna do when a 20 FBI agents show up to your house? You're gonna like try to have a shooting match with them? You can't do anything about it. You can't. So like that's what doesn't make any sense to me. Is that
people also say it's become such a politicized issue. They make up reasons, like, oh, people, there's house breakings don't happen that often. And even if they do, like,
they do, bro. They happen every like 34 seconds.
That's pretty often. Come on now.
Every 34 seconds.
But again, like, why would you shoot that? That's again what David was talking about. That
the fear.
Look at George
fear
Zimmerman in Florida. How he, George Zimmerman, for those of you who don't remember, Trayvon. So George Zimmerman was a security guard at this private housing place in Florida, and he basically killed an unarmed guy named Trayvon Martin, and he brought a gun, and it was a confrontation that he kind of started. Trayvon was just going about his business, correct? And Zimmerman was like, he looked shady, and then he ended up like kind of, they ended up in a shuffle. I'm getting the details wrong.
I think he like pushed him or something, right?
Yeah, Trayvon was unarmed, and George had a gun, but because of Florida's stand down gun laws, right? Like it was out of self-defense that George Zimmerman was protecting himself. According to Florida's law, that was legal. What he did was legal according to Florida law.
It was legal because he felt afraid. That's what.
Yeah, so that's what I don't understand, is like, how are you bringing a gun to a fight? Like, that's what I think what he was getting at, is a society like what Kyle Rittenhouse did, right? He brought guns to a protest, technically. Yeah. I mean, of all the people that he killed, they were all unarmed. Technically, I mean, they were armed. No, sorry. that's completely different. I'm getting details wrong now because I believe
Fine,
one of the
man.
guys was
Yeah.
armed. One of the guys
Yeah,
was armed.
yeah.
But regardless, we're in a culture where we think bringing a gun to a fight is going to protect ourselves. That we need a gun to protect against other people, and that's what he was kind of pushing back against. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
I mean
wanted to get.
that's like the root cause where it's like it feels like everybody needs a gun to because we're so scared of ourselves.
Like
We're in
that's the
fear.
reason though, right? Like
Yeah, that's
people could still want guns, but it's the reason behind it. And that's where I'm getting
behind
to.
the rise of gun, like
Yeah.
people buying guns.
People buy exactly that
Yeah.
just behind. Yeah. Another thing is like, so you,
Wait, no,
yeah,
I just wanted to say that root cause that we mentioned, that the
Yeah.
fear. I just feel like that root cause. I do believe that it is a big part of the equation, but it feels like, at least for me, I couldn't come up with any concrete solutions to address that. Where it's like, yeah, like what are we gonna do to address fear? That's why I feel like what Ibrahim is saying is he's giving us more concrete examples of, hey, like these are laws we can apply, licensing laws, age restriction laws. So I
Yeah.
feel like those are things we can do right now. But the whole concept of like the root cause, it's hard to address the root cause without going into like
How is fear being proliferated? How do you think?
say that again.
How is fear being proliferated right now?
It's not. I feel like it's being more
Yeah, it's being spread.
it's being spread more.
It is being spread.
So yeah, it is being proliferated.
It is. That's what I'm
How
saying.
so?
But like,
Okay.
how so? Right. It's
Well,
it's social media.
I don't
It's
think
marketing
it's
of
just social
it.
media. Look, I think so.
I think it's
One
the
of
shootings. I think it's the shootings.
But right. It is a shootings. But how are the shootings being like shown? Where are they being displayed? They're being displayed through social media, through media. Maybe not social media all the time, right? I'm not. I didn't mean to say it like that. I'm just saying like how mass the media is right now and how easy it is to get information
Yeah,
and how easy it is to post whatever you want or say whatever you want. That's my point.
that could be a part of the equation where it's like these other people who are not mentally stable look at past shootings and they might get ideas from it, which are from social media, which that could be a part of it. But I'm not sure like if
But isn't that more root? Because since the 70s, mass media has increased exponentially. And that's when we started seeing like more, not even mass shootings, like serial killers. We started seeing more serial killers in the 70s. And that's when media started coming about. And then what happened when we saw serial killers, right? You saw them in the newspapers, you heard them on TV. Oh, the Night Stalkers and wherever, right? And then and people started getting scared. And when people start getting scared, that's when they go ahead and try to find a solution for their family. So that's my whole thing, right? It's being proliferated through media. Like the media is talking about it. Therefore, it's happening more and more because ideas brew, right? When you see things, ideas brew in your head. And I mean, especially if you're unstable or you're not in a good place in life, it's a scary thing. And so I think that's more root than, these gun restrictions or these ages or I agree that you shouldn't be able to walk in and get a gun, right? That's not the argument here. But my argument is I think it's deeper than just expanding your age out.
I think I agree with you. I think social media could be a part of it, but it's just like, what are we gonna do about it? Because these companies, they get millions of views off of covering this stuff. They're not gonna anytime restrict, not show shootings or not show these ideas. Like they're getting millions of dollars out of it. So it's kind of like, yeah, that is definitely a part of it. But what are some practical steps we can take towards preventing?
Why isn't it practical though?
Practical for media to stop showing these shootings and stop covering them?
I'm not saying to stop showing them. I'm saying to stop like glorifying them. It's in a sense that they're like glorifying them, whether in a positive light or negative light. It's still.
How are they glorifying them?
I think they're saying like this is really bad. This is shooting.
But how are they glorifying?
I don't think they're.
them?
I mean,
that's why I said in a positive light or in a negative light. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But they are
how
showing
do you
it.
think? I'm asking you, how do you think the media is glorifying mass shootings? What are they doing that's glorifying it?
Bro, because it's so negative. They're consistently showing it. When you consistently show something, it gets in people's heads. And when it gets in people's heads, it's ingraining in like your subconscious.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that people, some nut jobs in the world, right? Like 18-year-olds, like the guy, the Uvalde shooter, he's turns on TV and he sees these mass shootings happen. And like, the shooter gets like his 15 seconds of fame and that motivates him to go do the same thing, do a copycat attack. Is that what you're saying? But when
Partially. I'm not
But
saying just those people though. I'm saying like in general, like in
but I mean,
people.
the part of journalists is to cover news. They can't
Yeah,
just not cover news.
that's what I'm.
Buddy, come on. Mass media isn't journalism. Don't say it is.
No, I mean, look.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean.
I
It's
don't
not
think the media.
practical because there's no way in any light like they're gonna stop covering this stuff. I know what you're trying to say, that they shouldn't be showing it in like such a to get views and stuff. But at the end of the day, they're never whatever stories comes, like they're gonna cover it and they're gonna make money off of it. It is that's what media does.
And what? Fear sells, right? And
Yeah.
that's how they consistently do it. And that
No, but
it's go ahead.
I see your point. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. Let me just say one thing really quickly. And I saw a similar TED talk to David. This was different. This was I forget the guy's name, but he was basically making a point, and he mentioned this quote. So H.L. Mencken used to be this essayist and journalist, and he had this saying. He said that for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And I think in the gun debate, it's such a complex issue. There's so many different layers to it, and people try to like limit it down to like one thing, like one element. It's not just one element. They like provide all these technical solutions, which is great, but the technical solutions are not comprehensive. They're only the tip of the iceberg. So I think that's the point that you've been saying, right? Like a lot of these specific things are just the tip of the iceberg. They're not comprehensive. So I think we should have we should have
100%.
comprehensive solutions that cover different elements of things. So is social media, I'm sure, is responsible for a lot of things. I don't, to your point about the journalism thing, I mean, journalists have to cover what's happening in the news. Sure.
No, I didn't
sell
say
fear.
journalism though. I didn't say journalism.
I mean, what are you saying?
I said
then?
mass media. I don't agree that
What do
mass
you mean
media
by
is
but mass
journalism.
media? They're journalists though. Like a
But
lot
they're
of them are
not, man. They're
journalists.
not journalists.
No, no, look,
They're
I'm not
sellers.
defending-
They're more
yeah.
salesmen than journalists.
Look, I agree with you. I am not supporting CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC. I don't particularly like any of them. My point is, though, there's certain things that they all have to cover. And this is because it's a huge thing. 19 kids, dude, just got killed. So they
Yeah.
have to cover it.
No,
You're
100, I'm
saying
not
to
saying
not
not to
cover
cover
it?
it. No, bro. I'm not saying
That's
that.
what I think
But
thought you were saying.
no, dude.
To
How
not
are
show it at all on TV.
No, dude. I said they're glorifying it. I said to stop glorifying it. There's people behind these mass media agencies, and all they try to do is think of clever, like what do the newscasters say like originally to catch your attention? How do we label the like clickbait essentially, right? Like it's all these things that just to sell, and it's not about that. It's a fact. 20 people died, and then that's what it is. It's not like all this.
But I know what you're saying, but the glorifying is the wrong term. I think what you mean to say is that they're using tragic events, right? And they're kind of almost exploiting people's emotions, right? So like when somebody sees they're emotionally affected, and are you saying that they're overly exaggerate the emotional impact of these events? Because it is very tragic. You
Yeah.
think, but it's so tragic. Like, how can they not? Like 19 kids. No, they're not over. I don't think they're being, I think
To exploit it the way they do, I think it's a lot, man. And like how much is getting pushed into our heads. Like every single person this last week has been posting like, obviously support for Uvalde. I don't think any person on earth says that it was a bad thing. I mean, it was a bad thing. It says that it's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like, but to consistently push it into our heads, like that gets pushed into our subconscious, and people aren't built the same.
What are they pushing though? I genuinely at this point I'm kind of lost. Isn't like what do you think they're pushing though? People posting all they're saying is there should be more, that we should reform our current gun laws, right? That's what I think everybody's saying on television. Not everybody. Some people are not. They're posting ridiculous.
What I'm
solutions.
saying, in the beginning of this, I said it's like a psychological aspect, right?
Mhm.
And so like that's
For
what I'm
who
saying.
though? For who? The shooters? Like potential shooters?
For shooters, for even the thing is, even prior to being a shooter, right? You're just a person, and then something happens along the line. I'm just saying for people in general. I think like social media, and I'll still say glorify. I think it is being glorified in a certain light.
So you
I
actually
think personally, I would disagree. I think, yeah, social media could have a role in motivating these shooters, or before they were shooters, just kids, I guess, these young men. But I just think at the end of the day, these people were not mentally stable to begin with, because
True.
no matter how much social media you show me, how much all of us, like most normal people, they're not going to go crazy. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, these people were to begin with, just not in a good place of mind. So yeah, I think social media might affect them a little bit, but at the end of the day, I don't see any way, you know, we're stopping social media, this mass media, or anyone to stop covering these events as, you know, they're big events. And I wouldn't say, like, I know what I kind of can see what you mean by glorifying. They're kind of covering it a lot, you know, getting, you know, always mentioning it and stuff. But I think that's just like, it is such a big event. I feel like 19 kids dying is a huge event. And I think they have a right to cover it to a certain extent.
Exactly. That's my point, right? What you just said, to an extent. I'm not saying don't cover it. I think people deserve to know what's going on in the world. Like that's journalism, knowing what's going on in the world and, you know, being aware. But to continuously push and push and push, like it gets a lot, man. It gets overwhelming. I guarantee there's people out there right now after watching this, they feel like genuinely sad. Maybe they're locking themselves in there, like they feel bad, right? They feel depressed from it. And like to push it so much, it gets to people.
What do you think
People
they're
aren't
pushing?
built the same.
I kind of understand your point. What do you think they're pushing though? Like
They're
what is it
pushing the
that they're
sale.
pushing?
They're pushing the sale.
The sale of what? I'm generally trying to understand what you're
No,
saying.
yeah,
The
100%. Yeah, I get it.
s-
The
the
sale
sale
of
of
the
what?
story. They're selling the story.
What is the story that they're selling? I want to know what you think about the. Okay, so you're saying they're
Yeah,
pushing an agenda.
exactly what happened.
Like what?
Well,
like
but the
what?
agenda is to make money, bro. That's what I'm saying. They're pushing the sale.
So you think they continuously cover they're continuously covering the Uvalde shooting on a daily basis.
Mhm.
But let me make a counter argument. I think they're doing it because they don't want people again.
Mhm.
I'm not defending mass media here, but I think the reason why a lot of people around the United States are so concerned, and this is something that they're constantly thinking about now, considering what just happened. And
Yeah.
there's another shooting that happened after Uvalde in Oklahoma at a hospital, correct? Like there was a mass shooting.
Also, right?
I think
Yeah.
that the point is that this isn't normal, that we should be thinking about this, and that the time is to act now, that we can't just be every single time the shooting happens, we can't just be like, oh, this is just, it's another day. Like we can't do anything
But
about
let's
it.
do something. Let's not just talk about it. All they're doing is talking.
So that's
Well-
what you're saying.
Well, I think
Yes.
that's what
But I
media
think we
can
need
do.
to
Media
but
can't do anything
that's
else.
all they can do, though. They can. I see what you're saying now. Okay, but that's all they can do. They can talk. I think it's good that they're having healthy debates and discussions on this. But you're right, though. It's about
For
action.
how many years, Ibrahim?
But that's what.
I mean, to a
else can the
certain
media
extent,
do?
that's what we're doing here. Like,
Yeah, that's
what are
what
we
we're
doing
Yeah,
here?
man.
We're-
But like,
we
but
can't
let's
do
push some
anything.
initiatives. Let's
So what-
vote, man.
that's what
Let's
I'm
not
saying.
have these politicians.
You know,
Go
the
ahead.
media talking more about this is actually building more momentum amongst the people. So our representatives in a Democratic Republic, they're going to represent
Mhm.
people's views. So if a member of Congress, his or her constituents are telling this specific member of Congress, look, do something about this, pass legislation that makes it harder for, somebody who's mentally struggling to get a gun, or just, increase the minimum gun age to 21, then they're going to, if they are getting pressure from the constituents, they're going to do something about it. So it's good. I think it's a good thing that the media keeps. You're right. They probably have some intention. Their intention, let's not get things twisted, is to make money. So I guess, as horrific as these events are, I guess it's good for CNN, MSNBC, and Fox because ratings are going up. People want to know what's going on. So they are making money. But that's, I mean, like, I guess
That's
I know
just
what
like
you're
a
saying here.
product
I know
of-
what you're saying, but it's like they have to. I think it's good that everybody keeps talking about this because then it just doesn't become another story. Like it's not.
See,
Like,
this
oh,
is
it
where
happened.
social media and politics collide, right? Because we continue to talk about it, and we continue to say, "Hey, these politicians aren't doing exactly what I said earlier. These politicians aren't doing anything. They're just listening to the lobbyists and taking their money too, right?" And that's where things are colliding.
But if we
It's
keep
like-
talking about it, action will happen. That's what the problem
But
is.
it
It's
shouldn't
like,
be like that, bro. It
no,
shouldn't
but
be
every
like
time
that.
a mass shooting happens, people do all these debates. Everybody becomes a gun expert,
Exactly.
and then nothing happens. But then that's the problem. People stop talking about it. We don't like. I think
Right.
in society, there's like things that happen, like with certain things, like Black Lives Matter movement. With like, look at what happening in Palestine. Remember that used to be like a huge thing. Everybody was talking about the whole world. and then
the
people
Uyghur
stopped.
genocide.
Yeah, people talk about certain things and then move on, and then they move on. Something happens, but that's the
Yeah.
problem. Like, why do
Shouldn't
we
there
move
be a
on?
national consensus?
So there is, I think, for more like look, there's national consensus to do so much more So I think
Socially,
so what do you mean?
socially,
No, I
it's
think
not.
that-
It's not going into law yet, man. It's not.
I think
it's just not.
I think
can
it is
hopefully.
now.
If I think it hopefully that's what I'm saying. If we continue, to
When
put
did
on
we say that
pressure-
last, bro? We said that last year too.
But-
We said
but
that in
we-
2018.
We can't. What you're saying is pessimistic, in my opinion, because you're saying
I'm not.
we
No, no, no.
can't-
I'm not being
we have to
pessimistic,
keep
bro.
talking about it though.
I'm
I
not being
think we-
pessimistic. I'm just saying let's do something about it. I
Exactly.
don't like
so
talking,
how can we
bro.
do something about it? If we stop talking about it, how are we gonna do something about it? That's what I'm saying.
I think okay, to a certain extent,
Push
listen,
politicians to act, bro.
that's what they're
Like
everybody's
we
saying.
can't do it.
That's
Matt,
what they're saying.
okay, listen, I think this
That's
is
what
how
they're
I see
saying,
it.
bro.
I think talking
Oh
about
my
it,
God.
talking about it, okay, you can disagree with me, but I think
Yeah,
talking about it is really important, and it's what we can do. That this is an action we're taking. Us covering this on the podcast is an action because
Something.
we don't have we're not politicians. We
Yeah.
we can vote in primaries and stuff, but like we could do that. I agree
voters.
with that. I encourage everyone to vote, but at the end of the day, we're not politicians. We can't do anything. But if we talk about the issue more, something will get done because at the end of the day, these the people who are in office because of people. And if people are talking about an issue and they don't resonate with the whoever's representing them.
Jenish, as a podcast, like us as a Gen Z Speaks podcast, are we doing this to make some sort of money, or are we doing this to cover the facts and then we move on to the next topic and cover facts?
Well, we don't make money, so we're just doing for the facts.
That's
Yeah.
my point. That's my
Yeah.
point, right? Even if we were making money, are we going to change our initiatives, or are we going to continue trying to be as unbiased as possible and continue to state facts and then move on?
Yeah, state facts and move on.
Okay, that's my point, bro. Like we're stating facts as like I guess we're technically a source of media, even though we don't have like a following, right? But that's my point, man. Like let's state the facts and let's do something with the politicians. Let's talk about the politicians not doing anything.
That's everybody's talking about though on media.
But what's
and
gonna
stuff.
happen?
I think something's might happen.
I think
So there's
something might happen.
currently-
I think this was a
Don't you
catalyst.
think like
I think
we'll
this
see.
we'll see.
Hopefully,
Though.
God
Yeah.
willing.
But
I mean,
see
in
your
my
point,
opinion, I
though.
think the Supreme Court and Biden, they should actually that's what I mean by national. I should have explained that earlier. That's what I mean by national consensus. I think I think the Supreme Court should go ahead and say, hey, this is an issue. Let's go ahead and make actual solutions for this. And then it's an actual topic, right? In the House.
Yeah. The
yeah.
issue is that, I agree with you that this should be a very like simple, like Ibrahim said, like it should just be, let's put in laws for licensing. Let's put in like better regulation laws. Let's do all this. But there's like, there's always going to be oppositions. Like the NRA is already appealing stuff where they're appealing laws are like, we have the right for guns, even 18-year-olds can buy guns. Like this is a Second Amendment. So even though like we think, and I think most people, hopefully most people think it's like simple, we push politicians to make laws that better regulate gun violence or guns in general. We have a lot of opposition at the end of the day, or not a lot, but we have a minority opposition. I mean, let's see how big the NRA is, but like there's always oppositions to this.
Yeah.
It makes it hard because like you said, these politicians are getting millions of dollars from the NRA to lobby against like what's so simple and what's so like what we know we should do.
So interesting, you guys mentioned the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is actually, I believe it's next week that there are going to be ruling on New York's state law, which requires residents seeking a license to carry a firearm outside the home to demonstrate a proper cause to obtain one. And so New York requires a resident, again, seeking a license to carry a firearm outside the home to demonstrate a proper cause to obtain one. So they have to demonstrate proper cause before obtaining a firearm. And the Supreme Court is going to be considering whether or not this is constitutional. And I'm quoting from an article posted by the CBS News regarding this. So to your point, the Supreme Court they can only review legislation. So it's up to Congress to pass updated new legislation that it's common sense gun reform, and the Supreme Court will then either rule it constitutional or unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court can't initiate stuff. It's the politicians that have to initiate things. So I think currently in the Senate, there's a bipartisan group of senators trying to do something. But you are right in that that's what they said after Sandy Hook, right? In 2012, Sandy Hook, 20 preschoolers got killed. I think a couple of teachers also got killed. But it was 20 elementary school, not even elementary, preschool kids, right? Sandy Hook got killed.
Yeah.
And nothing happened. Nothing. I mean, it didn't prevent mass atrocities from happening again. In fact, I think there's been over 2,000 more mass shootings since Sandy Hook. So you are right that, we always say something's going to happen and nothing ever ends up happening, but we should keep talking about it. At some point in time, if we continue to build up that momentum and hold our politicians accountable, something will happen. I truly believe that, because they represent the people. There's polls that say that 80 to 90% of Americans support basic gun reform, including licensing of certain weapons as well. So I think
You think they're for the people though?
they are supposed to represent the people. I think some politicians do listen to people. They do.
I think some do, man, but I don't
but
think
it's a
it's like
republic. So currently,
I don't think it's their job, bro. I don't think they're displaying their job the way it should be displayed.
But that's the problem. Like currently, the Republicans in Congress are there. Half of them are bought out by the not bought out, but they're. It's so
money
again,
talks. I get it.
It's not. They're not bought out. I wouldn't say they're bought out because the NRA is actually kind of going broke. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the NRA. By the way, is one of the most corrupt organizations. I would say nonprofit organizations in America. Their leader, Wayne LaPierre. No, let me tell you, dude.
They claim to be nonprofit.
They're not. They're nonprofit.
Yeah, they're a nonprofit.
They're not though, bro. They're
Yeah.
not nonprofit, man.
Yeah, dude,
I
it's
get
so
it.
ridiculous what they're doing. So Wayne LaPierre, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Frankly, I mean, I hope I
You
am
don't care.
pronouncing his name right. I mean,
Who
yeah, I
cares?
don't care, but he's so corrupt. He actually recently returned $300,000 back to the NRA because he was personally profiting off funds from the NRA. The NRA is currently under investigation from the New York Attorney General for misusing funds for a whole variety of abuses by Wayne LaPierre, like private jet abuses, clothing abuses from the NRA budget. And the crazy thing is, he was recently reelected to represent the NRA, and he's been the leader of the NRA since 1991. If you guys look into the
Who
NRA,
elects them?
it's the NRA board that reelects. They vote. It's the NRA members.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It doesn't make the NRA is literally a corrupt organization. It's very sad. They are a corrupt political entity. They are, I guess, their leader. I mean, it's very sad. Like you said, the guy was saying 30, 40 years ago, the NRA, was doing, I guess you could say, good work, right? Because they were promoting safe usage of guns, and they were like promoting it for sports and hunting. And now it's just all they say is Democrats want to take away your guns. That's all they say.
Mm-hmm.
And they say we support the Second Amendment. That's all. Literally, that's all they talk about, bro. Like they just. And you know what the crazy thing is? After every single mass shooting, they always have these conventions where they speak and like talk.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It pisses. Like it makes zero sense. After these kids literally just died, the parents had to bury them. They're having a whole event saying like what like it doesn't make any sense to me.
they make money from it. That's what makes sense.
Yeah, I guess they fundraise off that, but it's like. It's just
Bro,
ridiculous, man.
It sucks, man. But violence and it's always made money since the beginning of time. Violence has always had some fruition.
By the way, guys, just real quick, I just want to, because we've been mentioning licensing a lot, and I just want to give a little bit of context to people, like what we mean by licensing. I think there are about 13 states, including Massachusetts, and what licensing refers to is they have to go through a whole 3-week to a month process where they have to file an application, get fingerprints and other biometric data. They do obviously a extensive background check. They have to get referrals or references from people who they know to, just make sure that they're stable and they're responsible. And they have to do all this process in order to obtain a gun. So that's what we mean by licensing, just so it's clear. We're not just saying what's like is it just an application that you fill out? No, it's like a whole process.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, so that's a really good point. So a lot of people point to other countries to give examples, other developed countries that don't experience mass shootings, and they have a good point. They're right. The United States is the only developed country that actually we have a problem, so we need to acknowledge that. But let me give you, I think it's really important to give examples of states in the United States. So Connecticut in 1995 implemented a licensing program for guns, and they experienced a reduction in homicides since 1995. Homicides and suicides via guns have declined since 1995. You look at similarly another state that actually repealed its licensing program. I believe it's Missouri. They actually repealed their licensing program, I believe, in 2008. And since 2008, homicides per 100,000 people in Missouri, homicides and suicides have trended upwards. So there's two examples, right? Connecticut implemented a licensing system and homicides were reduced, shootings were reduced. In Missouri, the same law was repealed and shootings went up. This is like a example of the United States. And usually mass shootings, so I think this is actually another statistic that we should point out, that states with stricter gun laws tend to have less mass shootings, but states with lenient gun laws tend to have more. And that's just, it just makes sense. That's just like, it just makes sense. Sadly, it makes sense. So like why, and that's also the problem, because states in the United States have, because of how our system is created as one of our weaknesses, you could say, it's like every single state has their own policy because there's not a united set of federal
That's
laws.
exactly national
That's what we
consensus.
should,
Yeah.
we should have a,
Yeah.
we should have specific federal policies that regardless of which state you're in, you should be, there should be specific things that you can do or can do, right? That's what we don't have currently. Like specific federal state laws kind of oversee federal laws in certain instances. That's why, like, I'm not a legal expert again, but like,
Where's that statistic from, by the way? That there's more violence or not, or what did you say? Do you say mass shootings? Or you say violence in
not, I'm not
lenient
talking
state
violence. I'm talking, so I gave the example
Shootings
of
and homicides,
Missouri
right?
and Connecticut.
shootings and homicide? Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, what stat did you? Because you said it happens more often in lenient states than stricter states.
I think that
Mhm.
that's from the John Hopkins research gun licensing. That's where
No,
I
no.
read it.
So the example that I gave for Missouri and Connecticut is from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research. They did a study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed, that's actually a good point. For the other statistic that I was mentioning, that I think you're referring to, Matt, that the more lenient a state is with guns, they tend to have more mass shootings.
Right.
Let me give you the source for that, because that's important. Once I let me pull it up real quick.
Yeah, but I think like these statistics like these, like this shows that we know the answers. Like we've demonstrated that putting stricter gun laws have decreased homicide, decreased mass shootings. And I feel like the evidence is right in front of us, and it's just about implementation at this point.
The other thing is, like, with what Ibrahim said, like the united, national consensus, I guess, like with gun laws, like in California, like we're in LA, we drive 5 hours to Arizona, and in Arizona we can have whatever we want, basically. Like there's not a lot of prohibition against it, and so it's just, that's why I think it's
there and bring it
exactly
back
and come back. I mean, there's supposed to be border control, but have you ever been to Arizona or Nevada, bro? Border control does nothing. They look at you, see if you look like a decent human being. Like anybody could pretend to be a decent human being, right? And you just drive off.
There's no checks or anything. I'm pretty sure when I went, like I'm pretty sure we just go through.
There's a check, but they just don't really look at you. They kind of judge based off of your car. It's very it's not right.
So let me just, according to a nonprofit organization called Everytown for Gun Safety, they conducted a study in January of this year, and they found that there is a direct correlation in states with weaker gun laws and higher rates of gun deaths, including homicides, suicides, and accidental killings. And I'm getting this from a CNN article that was explaining the study. Exact words, they're not my words. So that's what the study found, that there's a direct link. Like, for example, California, the article states, had the strongest gun laws in the country, and they also had the lowest rate of gun deaths in the country. So that was like one of the examples that they stated. But so this is a nonprofit organization. Again, full disclaimer, this nonprofit focuses on gun control against like gun violence as like one.
What year was it conducted?
Like this year, 2022,
this year?
January.
Oh, okay.
So that's what the study found.
And I think
For sure.
we'll also put all these sources on the description,
sure.
because I think it's really important that we get our facts right, and we're not trying to be biased or in any way. You guys can check us.
I'm really proud of us for doing this. I think after every single episode, we post literally every single link of where we got our information from, just so we don't say anything that's not accurate, because we do sometimes say things that are not accurate. So we're not
human,
perfect.
right? We're human.
Yeah.
Last thing, because we didn't really touch on, we jumped to that other topic, but you said to compare, like a lot of people compare the US like other countries, right? I think you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but this is from my like opinion. Cultures are different per country, right? Just because we're all Western states doesn't mean we have the same culture. And I think like the United States definitely has a stronger personality, if that's the right word, more aggressive personality, stronger personality than like I would say England does, or like Ireland does, or France, right? And I think that definitely contributes to how we react to like situations. Um, and yeah, and I definitely don't think like, again, media helps with how our aggression is, or how we act upon situations.
Yeah, I think
It-
states definitely have different cultures, especially like it's
Countries.
or countries. Sorry,
Yeah.
in our constitutions we have something regarding the guns. Not a lot of countries have a lot of things in their main like constitution about guns. So, but I think also like the responses, like how we're kind of how our government structured. We're split into states. States have their own sovereign rights. They can make their own policies. I remember reading it in Finland, and I believe in 2007 there was shootings in Finland, and right after that they implemented like really strict gun laws. So I feel like in the U.S. it is different because states have their own rights, and the federal government can't really control them. So even if shooting happens in one state and that state takes action, not all states will follow them.
Yeah. Okay. Let me. So I disagree with you, Matt, because you definitely have a point that in the United States, we definitely historically just have a culture of like, we have a lot of gun owners in America for sure. But other countries also have a similar culture. For example, Switzerland, there's 8 million people in Switzerland, but there's 2.3 million privately owned guns. That's like, so
But their
that are
culture is different, bro.
no,
It's
but the
not.
culture
I'm
is,
not
I
saying to
think,
own
no,
guns.
you know
That's not
what's wrong with
culture.
the culture is that in
Mhm.
America, we don't do anything about the problem in mass shootings. He just mentioned Finland. They did something. In
Yeah.
Switzerland, they had this, if something doesn't work, a lot of states, because they're not as, a lot of countries, because they're not as divisive as us, they
Mhm.
actually do stuff to fix the problem, as opposed to us. We don't do anything to fix the problem because there's so many interest groups at stake. Like the NRA is there. There's so much
Fair.
misinformation, and people, we're not addressing this problem adequately. That's our problem. It's not that other countries are not have they don't love guns as much as we do. I think there's countries like Switzerland, they love guns way more than us, but they actually have common sense laws that make sense, that prevent them. We do not, unfortunately. We want to live in our little fantasy world, and think like, oh, like giving
Yeah.
access to an 18-year-old is not going to lead to a mass atrocity. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. So
I'm
we
not
don't do it.
saying, real quick, I'm not saying
Mhm.
that like owning guns is different per country. I'm saying the personalities are different. Like
No,
our
bro.
personality as I think so, in my opinion, as like an American, I don't think we have the same personality as somebody in Switzerland or Finland. I
Of
don't think
course,
so.
we're just so divisive. That's our personality. I feel like
Yeah.
is like we don't do it. Like I wouldn't say the people. It's just we're so screwed over by the people on the top, who are just. It's sad. I think we just refuse to do anything about it. That's what makes us so different and so much worse.
I think we can't. I think one issue, like what you guys are mentioning, is like we can't see the ideas or the problems for what they are. Rather, we kind of split into like ideologies. Does that support my ideology? No, it doesn't. So, oh, I'm against it, right? It's like we don't see the ideas and the problems or whatever the issue is for what it is.
Exactly. And that's so one of the TED Talks that I think like so many people should watch. I think every American should watch this TED Talk. It's by William Woodward, and he worked for the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado. And he basically was saying how, again, he was the one who talked about that quote that I said, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And his point was that to at least prevent school shootings, you need to first build a safe school climate. And that includes so many different things. Like it's not just, so one of the things that he said was like anti-bullying programs that are proven, because a lot of these shooters tend to be people who don't have as many friends. They're like usually bullied. And so schools need to have like a better anti-bullying programs. Then they need to have good communication amongst administrators and teachers. So if they identify students who are like, prone to violence or have had past incidents, that they're aware of those specific students. And then they should have like, they should also have, um, a lot of students, and it's so sad, have this code of silence where they don't like rat on other students. Like if they notice something, they're like, oh, code of silence. Which, if there's lives at stake, if you notice someone that's violent and that's like, that's prone to some of these things, you can anonymously report them. And he mentioned how, I believe in Colorado, they implemented a system for anonymous tips. And there were like, 1,700 tips that they received for suicides and mass shootings, and they were able to prevent certain events. So I think schools should have these anonymous tip lines where people can, talk, like tip on certain things that they see
Yeah.
might be, might be potential, like,
Anonymously.
yeah, anonymously. And then schools should collect data on things and like share that data with administrators and teachers and just
Yeah.
have more communication. And it needs to be a holistic list of solutions, not just one. But it all goes back to like building a safe school environment that I think can encourage more positivity and like be more inclusive of everyone, right? As opposed to like leaving people out of it. So
Oh, for sure. It should be inclusive. It shouldn't be, because then that again incites bullying, right? If you just exclude a certain group.
and just mass shootings as a whole, bro. Like in Fox News, there's some people who are like, we should have one entrance for schools. That's like, well, that's what will fix it. Oh, we should have more police officers. But okay, that's a technical solution, but that's not going to fix anything, because again, you're not going back to the root cause of things. First, you have to go back to the root cause of things and then actually understand the problem, like we've talked about, and then talk about a variety of different solutions, put them together, test it, and revise the plan. Like if it doesn't work, then okay, let's think of something else.
Exactly. Some action is better than no action, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
And we should be constantly trying to improve. That's what I don't understand. We're not even making an effort, bro, to like improve. It's ridiculous.
One solution that I thought was kind of funny, they said to arm teachers. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. Teachers inherently get frustrated with kids, right? Like, what if the teacher ends up shooting a kid because of frustration? Like,
I thought that was like a meme or like some sort of like sick joke.
It's
I was
an
like,
actual
there's
thing.
no way
Some
people
that was
actually
insane.
that.
Yeah, that was insane. More guns for teachers, right? For educators, they should be shooting. They should be defending the children. That's crazy.
I think like a really line that I liked by this guy, by William Woodward. He said that schools should have a multi-systemic community school planning with cops, teachers, and it just emphasized multidisciplinary efforts to prevent these things. So that's what we should have as a whole for mass shootings.
I agree.
Like a multidisciplinary approach where, yes, we fix cops trainings and we have common sense gun laws, and like we stop, like we do something. At the end of the day, we got to do something, and it needs to be something that makes sense, as opposed to just using a lot of times. What happens also is like these mass shootings happens and people are like emotionally speaking about things and they're being impulsive. And I don't think our legislation should reflect that. Our legislation should not reflect impulsive thinking. Rather, it should reflect
100%,
considerable, thought out, actual, practical things that can be done. And it should be an evolution. Like it should be constantly being evolved as opposed to being said and done.
Just to that point, with like statistics and data to back it up, right? Like we mentioned states that implemented things and they saw positive results. So everything should be under like a scientific, or like, I think it's a statistical manner.
Yeah, logic, right? Not just logic, because obviously there's some emotion based in like shootings and killings, and so it's fair. But don't let the emotions cloud judgment, I guess, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, I can also say something, dude. You know what's like? I was kind of just thinking about this, and it's like we always think when these things happen, like we're like, oh, we feel bad for the parents and stuff, but we never think. I mean, I'm sure some people do think, but I feel like a lot of people have this tendency. I'm speaking for myself, so I don't want to speak for others, but I have this tendency where I'm like, oh, I don't think that's gonna happen to me, because that's different. Like we never
100%,
imagine it happening to us, and then when it actually does happen, when shit hits the fan, it actually happens. It is like, dude, like the teacher, man, like the teacher who was killed in Uvalde, her husband, they were lovers for 26 years, high school sweethearts. He didn't last a day, dude. He had a heart attack 2 days later and died. And like that's like, it can happen to anyone. Like, what did the parents of Uvalde do? I'm sure they were mostly good people. You never know what happens, so you never know if it might happen to your kids at an elementary school or like a high school, or like we're in a shopping mall and something might happen. You never know if it hits you. So that's why I think all of us should do something about this, because it's not that it can never happen to us. Like you never know what might happen or might not. And like, again, bro, we're being desensitized. I'm messing up the
right word. No, that's the right word.
Yeah, but exactly. Like we're not thinking that this might actually happen to us, and that's why we never do anything about it. Like these politicians to think about, bro. Like, what if their kids were in Uvalde? Would they have the same response? What if Wayne LaPierre's grandchild was killed in Uvalde? would he be, come on, dude?
Like we're all
It's-
human
it's
until something
sad.
happens, right? Yeah.
And they always everybody sends their thoughts and prayers are with them. Like, what is that gonna do? That doesn't do shit. That can't bring their kid back, but that can save someone else's kid that might die, or like your own life at a shopping mall or like a movie theater. That's a huge thing that happens. Movie theaters always get shot up. Right?
Clubs, bars.
Clubs, yeah. It doesn't like
Churches now too, man.
what?
Like churches now too. Like, there's been-
Churches, places
yeah,
of
bro.
worship, man.
Yeah,
Mosques,
that used to
yeah.
be so interesting thing. I was reading this was a while back. I don't remember exactly how long ago, but I was reading this research thing when the first it happened. I think they went into a black church. I think it was an Asian guy. He went to a black church and he shot up a bunch of black people. But regardless,
A white guy did that actually recently.
was it a
young
white guy? I thought it was an
think
Asian
you're
guy.
talking about Charleston. Not
No.
very recently. It was a white guy who shot up. It was,
Was it?
was during Obama, where he literally killed like 10, 15.
Yeah, during Obama. Yes, correct. Yeah, yeah. So
no, it was a white dude. That was like a
Okay.
white supremacist, I think, or something like that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
my facts are off, right? But beforehand, like even like during like the Ku Klux Klan times, like when it was really prominent, like churches were pretty off limits. Like it wasn't as common, and now it's becoming more common because people are starting to see it as like not a place of worship, not a place of higher being, but it just like human things, right? There's just normal earth things that's not on a different level, I guess. And that's just crazy to me, man. It's crazy to me to see how people change, and how once one person does something nowadays, it's like it becomes like a norm. It becomes okay, and it just happens more and more. It's like the snowflake on the snowball effect.
Yeah. So I just looked this up to make sure.
Yeah.
It was in 2015. It was a church in Charleston, South Carolina. 9 people were killed, including the pastor. The pastor. I mean, it's ridiculous, dude. A place
Insane,
of
dude.
worship, God. Yeah.
Brutal
Man,
times, man.
It's frustrating, man. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I think we should keep talking about it. Like, just not talking about it is not gonna help. Like, we should do our level best. Like, urge like our senator or representatives to do something about
That's what
it.
we should do.
Like,
Yeah.
actually hold them accountable. Like, no, like actually protest. Like, show up at their office and protest. Like, that not too serious. Like, give them a hell of a time to like make
Yeah,
them
for sure,
feel all
man.
the pressure in the world. To do
I actually want
something
to
should
know
feel
what
pressure.
I actually want to know what like a lot of people think on the internet, not just like people on Twitter who have like the people with a lot of followers, just like normal people. I want to talk to more and see what they think. Like, if you guys are watching this, like maybe comment or
know.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I want to know what your guys' views are.
DM Jenish. Let him know. He's single, by the way.
Whoa, calm down.
Oh man.
No, for sure, Jenish. I hear you. I think that was pretty good though, man. Like I think our opinions and like the facts kind of fluctuated well. So good stuff, boys.
Okay, I think we're done. Till next time.